I join my colleague from Connecticut here on the floor of the Senate to commemorate a sad, sad day, 6 months since the shootings in Newtown that took 20 little 6- and 7-year-olds and 6 of the teachers that were charged with protecting them. Madam President, I know you share in our sadness because it wasn't too long afterwards that your state went through a tragedy in some ways of smaller and bigger proportions. And you have to wonder, 6 months later, after these families, the brothers and the sisters and the moms and the dads of these victims coming down to the Senate over and over again, including this week, looking senator after senator, congressman after congressman in the eye and asking for this place to learn something from this tragedy, you wonder how 6 months later we've done nothing. You wonder how, if 20 little kids dying at the hands of a madman with a gun over the course of 5 or 10 minutes doesn't move this place to action, what would? What visit to your office, what message, what story, what set of facts could possibly make this place change the laws that have allowed for these slaughters, plural, over and over again to happen? It's 6 months later, and we have done nothing. At least here in the Senate floor, we raised a bill, we put it on for debate. We got 55 votes, and the rules prevented us from getting it passed. The House down the hall has done absolutely nothing. Haven't lifted a finger to move legislation forward. 6 months later, and no answer for these families. Madam President, I was there with Senator Blumenthal that afternoon in that firehouse, and those are moments that, I would, a lot of days, love to have never lived, things that I didn't need to see. But it changed my life, committed me to action, and it commands us to understand that the most shallow argument that has been posed, I would argue the most backwards argument that has been posed over the last 6 months, is that yes, these terrible things happened, the most terrible of them we're marking the 6-month anniversary of, but there's nothing that we could do here that would really change that. That really bad things are going to happen to good people, to good first grade students, but that nothing here is going to really change any of that. That is just flat wrong. And it shouldn't be every 6 months that we come to the floor to try to rebut that argument. It should be every day. Because in Columbine, the guns that were bought to slaughter those high school students were bought outside of the background check system. Intentionally so, because the person that bought them knew if they went into a legitimate gun store, they wouldn't be able to purchase the guns that were being requested. And so they went to a gun show around the background checks system. We know different laws would change things because in Aurora, the shooter went in with a 100-round drum, and the shooting stopped and people escaped, including a couple of my constituents, because the gun jammed. They had trouble switching these massive, massive ammunition clips. And in Newtown, we know the power of the gun that was used. I mean, these assault weapons are all over the place today. They've become commonplace, but it doesn't belie the fact that they still have a power to kill that few other guns do. So much so that Adam Lanza walked into that school that day, fired over 150 rounds, shot 20 kids, and not a single one of them survived. Every kid that he shot died, in part because of the power of that gun. That same day, a very sick man walked into a school in China, armed with a weapon, attacked over 20 children, and every single one of them lived. That guy had a knife. Assault weapons, if we continue to allow them to ripple throughout our streets, lead to these mass slaughters. High-capacity ammunition clips, when somebody chooses to engage in one of these massacres, allow more people to be killed. And our failure over and over again to pass comprehensive background checks is unacceptable given the number of criminals and the number of people with severe mental illness who are still allowed to get guns on the internet or in gun shows. 6 months and we've done nothing. But you know, Madam President, I stand here, frankly, more optimistic about human nature than I was 6 months ago, not less optimistic. I might be less optimistic about this place and about the United States Congress, but I'm more optimistic about the indomitable human spirit than I was when this started out. Senator Blumenthal said it best. That 10 minutes of grievous violence, mental illness masquerading as evil inside that school, was essentially enveloped by the millions of acts of humanity that just flowed forth from Newtown, from Connecticut, from all over the country, whether it was the heroism of those teachers, whether it was the firefighters, the volunteer firefighters who stayed at that firehouse for days and weeks on end with no pay, or just the thousands of gifts, teddy bears, of small tokens of appreciation of the community that came from all over the country. People are good. They really are. And despite what that young man did, it reaffirmed my faith in who we are. Last Friday night, the Sandy Hook Fire Department had their big annual fundraiser, and some people wondered whether they would do it. Now, first of all, they said they were going to do it because they weren't going to start changing the way that they did things. And second, they needed the money because they have expended a lot of effort and equipment and resources in responding to this tragedy. Well, on Friday, we had an absolute deluge in New England. It was just raining cats and dogs all day. There was no reason why they should have gone forward on Friday night with that lobster bake at the Sandy Hook Firehouse. But they decided to put it on, and I went, despite thinking that there was going to be about 6 people inside that firehouse. It was packed, jammed full of people, not just from Newtown, but from all over New England, who came down on a torrentially rainy evening to show their support for those firefighters, for that community, and for those families. That's what defines Newtown. 6 months later, we know the headlines still read about the 26 kids and adults who lost their lives there. But what we know Newtown to be today is a place full of love, full of compassion, and though not maybe today yet, a place that will, a year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, be defined by resiliency. So, Madam President, I wish we weren't down here commemorating 6 months. I wish we weren't down here commemorating nothing having been done over the course of 6 months. But we are not going away. We are not giving up. The families that were down here this week didn't turn into advocates for 4 months. They turned into advocates for 40 years. And they will be back again and again and again until we have an answer for these mass tragedies and for the 5,033 people who have died at the hands of guns since December 14th, 6 months ago.